There's a sound in places like this that no one ever talks about. It's not the nurse's soft-soled shoes on the linoleum or the distant chime of a call button. It's the sound of waiting. A deep collective hum of lives paused at the final station, staring down the tracks for a train that isn't coming. They tell you these homes are for your safety, for your care. And they're not wrong, not entirely. But the brutal truth, the one they don't put in the glossy brochures, is what that safety costs. It isn't paid in dollars, it's paid in small daily surrenders of who you used to be. You trade your stories for a chart, your memories for a medication schedule. You become a room number. I'm Richard. I live in room 3B, and I'm here to tell you about the slow, quiet theft of a soul, a theft so polite you barely notice it's happening until all you have left is the echo of a life you once owned. 2 years ago, this wasn't my life. My life was a two-story house I bought for $18,000 in 1971. It was the scent of my wife Carol's coffee in the morning, and the familiar weight of her head on my shoulder as we watched the evening news. Her heart gave out on a Tuesday, no warning, no goodbye. The house went silent after that. The silence became a kind of presence, a constant reminder of the person who was supposed to be my witness to the end. I tried to keep going, of course. I made the coffee, I paid the bills, but the fall was inevitable. A patch of black ice on the walkway, a simple slip, and my independence shattered along with my leg. My children, Stephen and Deborah, they made the decision. It was the right one, the logical one. But logic is a cold comfort when you're surrounded by four beige walls, and the only thing that truly belongs to you are the ghosts in your head. Before the fall, before these beige walls, my life was a fortress of routine I had built against the silence. Waking up was the hardest part. For 48 years, the first thing I saw was Carol's face. After she was gone, it was just the permanent indentation on her pillow, a ghost of her presence I couldn't bring myself to smooth out. I would go downstairs to the kitchen we remodeled in '92, and the quiet was a physical thing, a weight in the air. I'd make 1 cup of coffee, not two, and the sound of the machine always felt too loud, like an unwelcome guest. I'd sit at the table and do the crossword from the paper, just as we used to, but her pen wasn't there. I could never remember the 7-letter word for a type of songbird she always knew. My days were a series of small, stubborn rituals designed to prove I was fine. Mowing the lawn, paying the bills the day they arrived, double-checking the locks at night. I wasn't living in that house anymore. I was its curator, managing a museum of a life that was already over. The phone would ring on Sundays, like clockwork. First Deborah, then Stephen. "How are you, Dad?" The question was a formality, a prelude to a report on their own busy lives, the kids, the job, the leaky roof. I always said the same thing. "I'm fine. Everything's fine." What else was I supposed to say? That the house felt like it was holding its breath? That I sometimes talked to her empty armchair just to hear a voice that wasn't my own? I had spent my entire life being the provider, the rock. You don't just stop being the rock because your foundation has crumbled. I raised them to be independent, to build their own worlds, and they did exactly that. I was proud, but pride is a lonely companion. I would look at a picture on the mantelpiece, Deborah after winning her third-grade spelling bee, and realize I was the only person left on earth who remembered the exact way her face lit up that day. I was the sole keeper of these small sacred histories, and my greatest fear was being the last one to hold them. My roommate's name was Howard. We weren't friends, not in the way you think of friends. We were more like two old trees growing side by side in a managed forest, our roots never touching, but our branches weathering the same quiet seasons. We shared the same beige walls, the same scheduled meals, the same low hum of the air conditioner. Our conversations were sparse, limited to the weather or the quality of the mashed potatoes. Yet, there was a silent pact between us. We were witnesses. We saw each other every morning and every night, a quiet confirmation that we were both still here, still breathing. He had a faded photograph of a woman on his nightstand, and I had one of Carol. We never spoke of them. We didn't need to. The silence in our room was a shared language of loss. Then, one Wednesday morning, the silence changed. I woke up, and his bed was empty, the sheets stripped away with a chilling neatness. Howard was simply gone. The efficiency of it was the most brutal part. There was no announcement, no moment of shared remembrance, just a void where a man used to be. Two women from housekeeping came in, their faces professionally blank. They moved with a practiced, dispassionate rhythm. One wiped down the nightstand, clearing away the water glass and the dog-eared paperback. The other bundled Howard's few possessions, a worn sweater, a pair of slippers, that single precious photograph, into a black plastic bag. The whole process took less than 20 minutes. An entire life, or what was left of it, erased from view and sealed with a twist tie. I sat in my chair by the window, pretending to read the paper, but I watched every movement. I felt like I was watching my own ghost being packed away. They weren't just clearing a bed, they were turning a person back into real estate, making room for the next occupant. The system didn't mourn, it simply reset. I didn't cry for Howard, I barely knew him. I cried for the photograph. I cried because I realized I never once asked him her name. In all our shared months of quiet observation, of breathing the same recycled air, I had let him remain a collection of habits rather than a history. The system that was erasing him had found a willing accomplice in me. My own retreat into the fortress of my grief for Carol had made me blind to the man sleeping 10 feet away. I had honored the institution's unspoken rule: don't get too close, don't ask too many questions, because everything here is temporary. Looking at that empty, sterilized space, a profound shame washed over me. It was a cold, heavy feeling in my gut. The true horror wasn't that Howard was gone. It was that he had been there the whole time, and I had failed to truly see him. I saw his empty bed, and for the first time, I understood what it meant to die twice, once when your heart stops, and again when the last person who knew your story is gone. By the afternoon, the new man arrived. His name was Arthur. His daughter helped him unpack, placing a new photograph on the freshly wiped nightstand. A different woman, a different life. Arthur nodded at me, a polite, weary greeting, and I nodded back. The cycle had already begun again. But for me, something had irrevocably broken. The fragile peace I had made with this place, the resigned acceptance of my routine, was shattered. The quiet waiting no longer felt passive. It felt like a countdown. Howard's disappearance wasn't a death. It was a demonstration. It was a lesson in how quickly a life can be condensed into a single black bag. I looked at Arthur, this stranger who now slept in Howard's place, and I didn't see a new roommate. I saw the gears of a vast, impersonal machine turning, and I finally understood my own place within it. I wasn't a resident. I was inventory, and my only value was in the space I occupied. The days after Arthur's arrival took on a different texture. The beige walls seemed closer, the air thinner. I started noticing things I had previously ignored, the way the staff called everyone Sweetie or Han, a generic affection that erased our names. I saw how every conversation, even the kindest ones, ended with a question from a checklist. Have you had a bowel movement today? Are you feeling any pain on a scale of 1 to 10? My life, my entire history, was being systematically reduced to a series of data points for a chart. I wasn't Richard anymore. I was a collection of vital signs and daily needs. The quiet battle began inside my own mind. I started making a point to tell the nursing aide about the '71 Ford I once rebuilt, just to force a story into a room built only for procedure. It was a small, pathetic act of defiance, a desperate attempt to prove that the man who lived a life was still in here, buried under the patient who was just waiting to die. Stephen came to visit that Saturday. He brought me a new pair of non-slip socks and a bag of oranges. He sat in the vinyl chair where Howard's life used to be and updated me on his work, his daughter's soccer tournament, the leak in their roof. He was a good son performing his duty, but I could feel the clock ticking in his head. His gaze would drift to his phone. His knee would jiggle with the nervous energy of a man with 1,000 other places to be. He was checking boxes on a list. Visit Dad, check. Bring supplies, check. Ensure he's safe, check. He asked if I needed anything, but he never asked what I was thinking about. He never asked if I missed his mother. The question I longed for was never on the list. I spent my whole life providing for him, making sure he had everything he needed. I just never realized that what he would learn from me was how to be efficient, not how to be present. My neighbor across the hall, Leonard, has been here for 5 years. He spends his days in the common room, meticulously completing the crossword puzzle with a pen, a final act of intellectual defiance. I sat with him one afternoon, the silence between us comfortable. "They're good people here," I said, mostly to myself. Leonard didn't look up from his paper. "They're not the problem," he murmured, filling in a 7-letter word. "The problem is the routine. It's like water dripping on a stone. At first you don't notice, but after a few years it wears you down to nothing." He finally looked at me, his eyes clear and devoid of any illusion. People adjust to anything when they have no alternative. He wasn't saying it to be cruel. He was stating a law of physics for this place. He was talking about the slow, quiet death of hope. And in his words, I heard the echo of my own future, a future I was suddenly, desperately unwilling to accept. It happened on a Tuesday, the day Stephen always visited after his weekly sales meeting. He sat in the chair that used to be Howard's, his suit jacket still on, a faint smell of coffee and ambition clinging to him. He was telling me about a new client, about my granddaughter's braces, about the estimate he got for the new driveway. His words were a steady, dutiful stream, but his eyes kept flicking to the door, to the clock on the wall. And then he did it. He subtly pulled back his cuff just a fraction of an inch to glance at his watch. It was a small gesture, almost invisible, but it landed in my chest like a stone. It wasn't impatience I saw in that moment, not exactly. It was the quiet, relentless pull of another life, a life where he was needed, a life that wasn't here. In that instant, the familiar sting of being a checkpoint on his to-do list was suddenly eclipsed by something else, a ghost of a memory so sharp it stole my breath. The walls of my room dissolved, and for a terrifying second, I was 25 years younger, standing in a room just like this one. The same smell of antiseptic and overcooked vegetables, the same beige walls. But I wasn't in my chair. I was standing by the bed of my own father. He was telling me a story about his time in the army, a story I'd heard a dozen times before. And as he spoke, I remember the feeling, the low-grade anxiety of a Saturday afternoon slipping away, of the lawn that needed mowing, of the kids waiting at home. I remember pulling back my own cuff to check my own watch, hoping he wouldn't notice. In that flash of memory looking at my son, I didn't see Stephen. I saw myself. I saw the same dutiful love, the same hidden impatience, the same quiet prayer for the visit to be over. It wasn't his fault. It was a lesson I had taught him. The pattern doesn't just repeat. We are the ones who hand it down. A wave of cold clarity washed over me, so profound it felt like drowning. All these months, I had been nurturing a quiet resentment, a sense of victimhood. I was the forgotten father, the man left behind. But the truth was a far more brutal thing to accept. I had spent my entire life believing that being a good father meant being a good provider. I worked 60-hour weeks to give my children a life I never had, to build a fortress of financial security around them. I thought providing for them was the same as being there for them. I thought love was a thing you could demonstrate with a paycheck and a paid-off mortgage. Now, here I am, in a place where all my needs are provided for, and the only thing I have is time. And I finally understood. You can't save time with your family like money in a bank. You can't make deposits of your presence and expect them to accrue interest. Once it's spent elsewhere, it's just gone forever. Sitting there, across from my son, who was a perfect reflection of my own past mistakes, the bitterness finally broke. It didn't drain away in anger, but in a deep, hollow sorrow. This loneliness wasn't a punishment inflicted upon me by the system or by my children. It was the harvest. It was the quiet, inevitable result of seeds I had planted myself decades ago, with every late night at the office and every missed school play. I had taught my children that duty was the highest form of love, and now they were dutiful. I had shown them that a man's worth was in what he built, not in the quiet moments he shared. I couldn't be angry at them for learning the lessons so well. The great tragedy of life isn't that we fail to get what we want. It's that we get exactly what we deserve, and we only understand it when the test is already over. When Stephen finally stood up to leave, patting my shoulder with that familiar, hurried affection, I didn't feel the usual sting of abandonment. For the first time, I saw him clearly. I saw the weight on his shoulders, the same one I used to carry with a kind of stubborn pride. I saw the endless list of obligations scrolling behind his eyes. I saw a good man trying to honor a past he barely had time to remember, using a language of duty that I myself had taught him. I had spent years being the architect of his life, laying the foundation, raising the walls, and then I was surprised when he didn't know how to just sit in a room with me. The anger I had been nursing for months, that quiet, bitter resentment, just dissolved. It left behind a vast, aching quiet. It wasn't his fault. It wasn't even the system's fault. It was simply the result of a life spent building things, forgetting that the most important construction is the one that happens in the space between two people. I had built a fortress, and now I was living in it. The next morning I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I wheeled myself over to the other side of the room, to the nightstand that used to be Howard's. Arthur was sitting up in bed, staring at the photograph of the woman with the kind smile. I stopped a few feet away, my heart pounding with a strange, unfamiliar nervousness. "She has a beautiful smile," I said. My voice sounded rusty, out of practice. Arthur looked up, surprised, his eyes wary. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer, that the unspoken rule of polite distance would hold. But then a flicker of something softened his face. "That was Eleanor," he said, his voice thick with a history I knew nothing about. "She loved a garden, could make anything grow." We didn't say much more after that, but the silence in the room was different. It was no longer an empty space between two strangers. It was a space that now held a name and a garden and the memory of love. It was a small thing, but it felt like opening a window in a room that had been sealed shut for years. I'm still in room 3B. The food is still bland, the nights are still long, and the quiet hum of waiting is still the loudest sound. But I'm no longer just waiting. I have a new job now, a final one. I collect stories. I ask Leonard about the war, and I listen, really listen, to the details he leaves out of his crossword puzzles. I ask Janet, the aide who remembers my eggs, about her children. I've started telling Arthur stories about Carol, about the time she tried to bake bread and nearly set the kitchen on fire. I am becoming an archivist of the forgotten, a keeper of the small, sacred histories that this place is designed to erase. It doesn't change the outcome. The train is still coming for all of us, but I've learned that dignity isn't about fighting the destination. It's about refusing to let them take your ticket, refusing to let them convince you that the journey never mattered at all. My name is Richard, and I remember. I spent a lifetime building things. A career, a savings account, a 2-story house I believed was a fortress of security for my family. But I realize now I built it with the wrong materials. I used the hours I should have spent at a school play, the full attention I should have paid during a simple dinner conversation. I thought I was constructing a legacy of provision, proving my love through sacrifice and hard work. But what I really built was a beautiful, empty house of absence. My children visit me out of a sense of duty because duty is the primary language of love I taught them. They check on my safety because I showed them that love is about ensuring security, not about sharing presence. The brutal truth of this place isn't that it strips your identity away. It's that you can arrive here with an identity already hollowed out by a lifetime of misplaced priorities, and you only notice when the silence becomes permanent. So if you are listening to this, listen to an old man who has nothing left to sell you but his regrets. Please do not make my mistake. The promotion you are chasing, the extra shift you are taking to afford a bigger house, the endless scroll of distractions that feel so important in the moment, they are ghosts. They will not come and sit with you in the profound quiet of a room like this one. Your true legacy will not be the title on your business card or the balance in your bank account. Your legacy is etched in the memories of the people who love you. It's in the stories you tell, the hands you hold, the quiet, unremarkable moments you choose to be fully present. The work will always be there, waiting for you. The people you love will not. In the end, when all the noise of your life finally fades away, the only question that will matter is this: who is left to remember your stories?